Greetings, dear chess fans and experts. This is FIDE Master Max Omariev with you. And today we'll analyze the game from the Sinquefield Cup tournament, in which the reigning world champion Magnus Carlsen and the challenger Yan Nepomniachtchi took part. In the first round, Carlsen and Nepo played their first classical game since 2021 World Championship match. After that game, all questions why Magnus gave up the title fall away. The world champion played with the white pieces. We have classical control, which is quite unusual these days. Okay, let's see how it went. So here we have the Queen's Gambit, and Magnus Carlsen plays CD going for the Carlsbad structure. After knight c3, Nepo often chooses the Tarrasch attack by playing c5. He quickly equalizes, so Magnus decides to get a position which he likes more, but without any advantage, black takes, knight c3, c6. And here, as a rule, white prevents black bishop from moving to f5. White plays queen c2 or knight g5 because here on bishop f5, white will play queen b3 attacking the pawn. And in the case of queen b6, we take this knight, double the pawns, and black's structure is bad. But Magnus did not impede the white squared bishop at all. He plays bishop f4. Bishop f5 follows. e3, knight d7. He can't say that he approached this game completely uncomplainingly and peacefully. He had a pretty tough plan. He plays h3 with the idea of playing g4, g5, and starting an attack on the king's side. Yan Nepomniachtchi does not pay attention to this. Plays bishop e7, g4 follows. Bishop e4. It's an interesting move. Interestingly, Magnus Carlsen has played this before. He could retreat on g6, but the move bishop e4 has an intention. In this position, Vishy Anand played bishop g2 against Magnus Carlsen in 2009. Here, the world champion plays bishop e2, and this is a novelty. You can't say that this move shocked Nepo. There's nothing really special about this move, just developing the bishop. The next move is queen b6. Perhaps castling was a bit more accurate. He doesn't have to be afraid of the opponent's attack, because here Magnus willingly exchanges the queens. He plays queen b3, and then the queens disappear from the board, and there's this ending. This is the style of the world champion. He likes to press hard on his opponents, gradually taking over the game, and prioritize his own interests. Well, let's see if he succeeded or not. Here Nepo played g6. The move is a bit inaccurate. The idea is clear, to keep this bishop, but it was better to play h6. For example, after white takes this bishop, we take with the knight. At least we have an active knight. There's potential bishop b4 check, but after knight g6, the bishop gets exchanged by the move knight h4, so it's not quite clear what black has achieved. And there follows one more inaccurate move. Nepo should have played bishop c2. After knight f5, exchange the pieces this way. Here black should play g6, knock out this wedge. The position is rather equal. But instead of that, Nepo plays bishop b4 attacking the knight. He wants to move this knight somewhere to e4, pressing on the c3 square. The whole problem is that after knight g6 and hg, Magnus plays f3, eliminating any idea of black trying to invade e4. White has an advantage. They have two bishops. The doubled pawn on b3 shouldn't bother you because it's impossible to attack. Let's see how things develop further. Knight f8, king f2. Knight moves to e6. Of course, the bishop doesn't get exchanged. King e7 and h4. This is a rather preventative move. Now the pawn on h3 is safe, and we have the right to move our rook wherever we want. Before that, it guarded the pawn on the h3 square. a6 followed. This move has the same reasoning. Now the rook can move anywhere. King g2. This is such a deep move. White wants to move the bishop to f2 or e1. Rook at e8, bishop to f2. The d4 pawn is protected. This is a fairly standard maneuver. White wants to play e4 and strike in the center. Bishop d6, bishop d3. Magnus is in no hurry. Like I said, he likes to play in the Anatoly Karpov style, gradually and methodically improving the position, especially when the opponent has no counterplay. And here Yan starts to play exceptionally passive. Bishop b8. This is some weak, incomprehensible move. it was better to play rook e8 to take the king away. It seems that the king has a good position in the endgame, but it's not all that simple. After bishop b8, Magnus Carlsen plays knight a4. The bishop is back on d6. Yan thinks he can do everything. He can repeat things again and again, but bishop e1 follows. White gradually improves their position. He wants to move his bishop to a5, and also he has an idea to play b4, move the knight to c5, and put pressure on b7. Magnus gradually, slowly, methodically improves his position, and Yan can't stand it, plays c5. The challenger should have played rook e8 and king f8, because as you'll see later, after c5, white can get to the king. Yan takes c5. Bishop d2. The pawn's protected. Yes, black attacks one more time in a row, but that's where their success ends. Rook e8 and follows a quick attack on the queen's side. b4 and b5. This is where all the disadvantages of the king's position in the center become clear. If we play ab, white takes b5 attacking the rook, and if we retreat, they give check on d4, and the king just ends up on the front line. Say rook h8, bishop b4 check. King has to move to e6. This is already kinda scary. If the e-file gets attacked now, then black king gets mated. White can play rook to e1, not to give any chances and not to sacrifice a pawn here, and we can also play g5, e4, or e4. The things don't look great around the black king at all, so a5 plays Nepo, trying to give up a pawn so that his king won't get tortured here. He's left without material, position more or less seems strong. White has a doubled pawn. It's an extra pawn, and the bishop is stronger than the knight. Here white has a very large advantage. Rook h8, attack the pawn. And Magnus defends it in a tempo manner. He plays g5 attacking the knight and rook a4. He doesn't want the rook to stand passively on h1. The world champion sets up his pieces very competently. After knight c5, rook g4. He does not want to play rook d4 because there's knight e6, knight b3. So rook g4, and Magnus has absolutely no fear of going into the rook, ending after knight takes d3. Exchange. Rook d7, rook d4. Here we could have this ending. Pawns on the queen side rapidly disappear, but white here has 3 against 1 and also the g6 pawn gets captured. 3 pawns rushing forward, and for this one we're even ready to give up the rook. But our 3 pawns are enough to make at least a couple of queens. In the view of the above reasons, Yan plays king c7. He decided to take the king from under the potential check. He wants to establish the blockade on b6. Bishop b1, attacking the pawn. Rook e5, he tries to defend actively so he can press on e3 as well. Bishop a2, the pawn hangs, keep it up. Here Nepo plays f6. The move rook e8 gave nothing because rook takes d5 and also the knight is in danger there, so we don't have the time to take the pawn on e3. So Nepo plays f6. White takes. Rook takes d5, exchange. White already has 2 extra pawns. It's clear that it's close to the finish. Here Yan defends g6 by this elegant knight move, but it doesn't help anymore. Rook f4, black has too many weaknesses. Rook d8, an attack on the bishop, and here follows a very accurate b6 check, after which Yan lays down his arms. As we can see, Magnus had a clear dominance in this game. Let me show you why Nepo gave up. If king moves to d6, then bishop takes b7, the pawn is captured and white has 3 extra pawns. If king moves to b6, then rook f6 check. Then we drive the knight, for example, f4 and take g6. We'll still have 3 extra pawns. And if we play like king b8, we can still take this pawn by giving up the bishop, but then delivering checkmate. King c8 also doesn't help, because here we give up check and then take a pawn. So after b6, Yan gave up and we saw an absolute lopsided defeat. Magnus Carlsen himself was not impressed with his opponent's preparation. As I said in the beginning of this video, it becomes clear why Magnus lost his motivation to prepare for this match. He beat Nepo very confidently, and as we can see, at the moment, Yan Nepomniachtchi is not a match for the world champion. Although I'm sure that if the match were to take place, it would be much more competitive than their first game. It's possible that Nepo is slightly relaxed after his triumph in the candidates tournament. He feels like a winner and he must have been resting all this time, not really preparing. He can afford that. Now is his finest hour. He can rest, and at the right moment he will mobilize and show all his reserves. and I thank you for your attention. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give this video a like, and don't forget to hit the bell button as well to make sure you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. Also check our Telegram channel and Instagram, where we post only the latest news in the world of chess. Keep playing and studying chess, and I'll see you in the next video.